Another night of fleeting excitement awaited her if she chose to go. Yet, she hesitated. Leday's words echoed in her mind. What exactly are you looking for? She didn't have the answer. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to find out. Sua had learned something about herself. No matter how much attention she received, no matter how thrilling the experience, it never seemed to be enough. The excitement always faded, leaving behind an emptiness that grew deeper each time. Sua had always been different. From a young age, she was the kind of girl people noticed. Her deep brown skin glowed, her eyes held a quiet confidence, and her intelligence set her apart in school. Born and raised in Ibadan, she grew up in a conservative household, where discipline and faith shaped every aspect of her life. Her parents are devoted churchgoers, did their best to shield her from the world's temptations, but curiosity has a way of finding its own path. Her first brush with unfamiliar emotions came at 11. She often spent time with older neighbor whenever her parents traveled. One evening, while playing in the dimly lit corridor of their house, her 15-year-old neighbor Tolu introduced her to ideas she had never considered before. It started as teasing, innocent jokes about relationships and love, but something about the conversation stirred a new awareness in her. At 16, Sua was fully aware of her beauty and the effect it had on people. Teachers praised her brilliance, boys in her school stole glances, and older men often commented on how she was growing into a fine young woman. She didn't fully understand the weight of these words yet, but she knew they carried a certain power. In her final year of secondary school, she found herself drawn to experiences that were thrilling yet unexplainable. There was a young teacher, Mr. Dapo, who always took a special interest in her academic progress. He encouraged her, gave her books to read, and spoke to her as if she were more mature than her age. One evening, after an extra class, she realized the excitement she felt wasn't just about learning. It was about something else entirely. University life became her awakening. Away from her parents' watchful eyes, she had the freedom to explore emotions she had long kept bottled up. She made new friends, attended social gatherings, and met people who introduced her to a world of excitement. The attention she received was intoxicating. Some admired her mind, others were drawn to her beauty, but deep down, she was searching for something she couldn't quite name. Despite her confidence, Sua sometimes felt an emptiness that no amount of attention could fill. She wasn't reckless, but she was restless. She kept chasing a feeling, one that always seemed just out of reach. As she stared at herself in the mirror one evening, her phone buzzing with yet another invitation, she wondered, what exactly am I looking for? She didn't have the answer, but she knew she would keep searching. Sua's search for meaning was wrapped in the thrill of new experiences. In her second year at the university, she had perfected the art of maintaining an image, graceful, intelligent, and composed. She was the kind of girl people admired from afar and whispered about in close circles. She moved effortlessly between social groups, always present but never fully attached. To some, she was a role model, the brilliant young woman with a bright future. To others, she was an enigma, beautiful, charming, yet emotionally distant. No one could truly say they knew her. Then came Leday. Leday was different. He was not just another admirer seeking her attention. He was deliberate, composed, and confident in a way that unsettled her. He didn't chase her like others didn't shower her with predictable compliments. Instead, he challenged her, questioned her choices, and seemed to see right through the mask she wore so well. One evening, after a campus event, they found themselves walking together. The conversation flowed easily, but there was an underlying tension she couldn't ignore. You always seem like you're looking for something, Leday observed, his eyes steady on hers. Sua smiled, deflecting as she always did. Aren't we all? But you don't even know what it is, do you? His words lingered long after they parted ways. No one had ever confronted her like that. It unsettled her, but it also intrigued her. She wasn't used to being read so easily. As the weeks passed, Sua found herself drawn to Lede, not just for his confidence, but for the way he made her question things she had never stopped to consider. He was steady where she was restless, intentional where she was impulsive. But could someone like her truly be satisfied with someone like him? The question haunted her as she stood before her mirror again, staring at her reflection. Another invitation had come. Another night of fleeting excitement awaited her if she chose to go. Yet, for the first time in a long time, she hesitated. Lede's words echoed in her mind. What exactly are you looking for? She didn't have the answer. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to find out. Sua had learned something about herself. No matter how much attention she received, no matter how thrilling the experience, it never seemed to be enough. The excitement always faded, leaving behind an emptiness that grew deeper each time. Her first year in university had been full of discoveries, and by her third year, she had mastered the game. She knew how to attract men, how to hold their interest just long enough before moving on. They were drawn to her confidence, her charm, and the way she carried herself with effortless grace. But what they didn't know was that she was searching for something beyond their admiration. There was Deji, the final year student who had pursued her relentlessly, showering her with gifts and attention. He was the first one she truly let in, the first time she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this was what she needed. But after the initial thrill, she felt the familiar emptiness creeping back in. The stolen moments, the whispered promises. They were exciting, but once it was over, she found herself staring at the ceiling, wondering why she still felt unsatisfied. Then came Deo, the businessman who treated her like a queen. He was older, confident, and knew how to make her feel special. He took her to expensive places, spoke to her in a way that made her feel seen. And for a while, she thought she had finally found something real. But even with him, the feeling was fleeting. The more she tried to convince herself that this time would be different, the more she felt herself slipping into the same restless cycle. Every time she thought she had found what she was looking for, the emptiness returned. No amount of attention, no amount of pleasure, no amount of whispered affection could fill the void inside her. One evening, after another night that should have left her satisfied but didn't, she sat by her window, staring out into the night. The city lights flickered in the distance, but she felt nothing. Why do I feel this way? She wondered. She had everything: beauty, intelligence, attention. But deep down, something was missing. And the worst part, she didn't know what it was. Sua's addiction didn't happen overnight. It started subtly, creeping into her life like a shadow that grew longer with time. At first, it was just curiosity, an innocent desire to understand the feelings that stirred within her. Back in secondary school, she had been the girl everyone admired from afar. Boys tried to get close, but she dismissed their advances with shy smiles and polite rejections. She was raised to believe that such things should wait until the right time, but there was always a part of her that wondered, what is it about love and intimacy that makes people lose control? Her first real taste of attention came in her final year of secondary school. She had grown into her beauty, and suddenly, the way people looked at her changed. Teachers spoke to her with an extra softness. Male students found excuses to start conversations, and even older men outside school took notice. It was intoxicating. She liked the way their eyes followed her, the way their words dripped with admiration. By the time she got to university, she had become addicted to the thrill of being desired. It wasn't just about the physical pleasures, it was about the power. The knowledge that she could walk into a room and command attention without saying a word. The way men stammered around her, the way they tried to impress her, the way they offered her everything just to have a piece of her presence. But the problem with such attention was that it was never enough. No matter how many people desired her, No matter how many compliments she received, the satisfaction never lasted. The excitement was always temporary, fading the moment she was alone with her thoughts. The pleasure was the same. No matter how good it felt in the moment, no matter how much she told herself this time would be different, she always woke up feeling empty. It was like chasing a high that could never truly be reached. She had tried to stop, tried to convince herself that she didn't need it. But then the restlessness would return, creeping into her bones, making her feel like something was missing. And so she would go back, searching for the next thrill, the next moment of escape. But escape from what? That was the question she couldn't answer. One evening, as she sat in her apartment, scrolling through unread messages from men eager to see her, she let out a long sigh. She had everything she thought she wanted: admiration, affection, endless opportunities for pleasure. So why did she feel so lost? Sua lived in a world of fleeting moments where nothing ever lasted. One man after another, one thrill leading to the next, yet nothing ever truly satisfied her. She told herself she wasn't hurting anyone. After all, she never promised commitment. She never pretended to be someone she wasn't. But deep inside, she knew the truth. She was addicted to the attention, to the way men looked at her like she was the most desirable thing they had ever seen. Her relationships never lasted because they were never real. There was David, the charming law student who had fallen for her hard. He had dreams of building a future with her, of introducing her to his family, of making her the one. Sua played along at first, enjoying the way he doted on her, the way he spoke about love as if it were the only thing that mattered. But soon the excitement wore off. The thought of belonging to just one man, of being someone's only, felt suffocating. So she found ways to distance herself. She let his calls go unanswered, showed up late to their dates, gave vague excuses when he asked where she had been. Eventually, David got the message, and when he finally walked away, Sua felt nothing. No pain, no guilt, just relief that she was free again. Then came Tunji, a young businessman who was used to getting what he wanted. He was confident, wealthy, and didn't waste time with emotional games. He took her to expensive restaurants, bought her gifts, and treated her like a prize he had won. Sua liked that, at least for a while. But even with all his attention, she found herself craving more. She started seeing someone else on the side, Femi, an artist with a free spirit who had a way of making her feel understood. He wasn't like the others. He didn't try to own her, didn't demand more than she was willing to give. With him, she felt a different kind of thrill, the excitement of secrecy, the danger of knowing she could be caught. But no matter how many men she entertained, how many moments of pleasure she collected, the emptiness always returned. She tried to tell herself that she was in control, that she had the right to enjoy life however she pleased. But deep inside, a voice whispered, "This isn't right. You're losing yourself." Still, she couldn't stop, because stopping meant facing the truth. And the truth was far scarier than anything else. Sua never thought she would care. She had told herself over and over that she wasn't the type to get attached, that feelings were a weakness, that love was a game she refused to play by anyone's rules but her own. But that was before Daniel. Daniel was different. He wasn't just another admirer caught up in her beauty or charm. He was steady, confident, and unlike the others, he didn't worship her. He treated her like an equal, like someone who had substance beyond just looks. At first, it irritated her. She was used to men trying to prove themselves to impress her. But Daniel didn't chase. He simply existed, and somehow, she found herself drawn to that. For the first time in a long time, Sua wanted something more. Maybe not love. She wasn't sure if she was even capable of that. But at least consistency. Stability. Someone who made her feel something deeper than just momentary excitement. So when she heard him on the phone one evening, laughing in a way she had never heard before, something inside her tightened. She was in his apartment, curled up on the couch while he stood by the window, speaking in a low voice. "I'll see you soon," he said, chuckling. "And don't worry, I just sent the money." Sua's heart pounded. A woman's voice. Soft laughter. The easy affection in his tone. So this is how it feels, she thought bitterly. When he ended the call, she sat up. "Who was that?" Daniel raised a brow. "Why do you ask?" "I heard you." Her voice was sharper than she intended. "You're sending money to another woman and making plans to see her?" He stared at her for a long moment, then let out a humorless chuckle. "You're serious? Do I look like I'm joking?" Daniel shook his head, rubbing his temples. "Sua, that was my sister." She froze. The room suddenly felt too small, too hot. She started, but he cut her off. "You thought I was cheating? You, of all people?" His voice was calm, but there was something in his eyes, something cold. "That's funny." Sua clenched her fists. "Why are you making this about me?" "I just asked a question." "No, you accused me." He folded his arms. "And that's the real joke. Because if there's anyone in this relationship who's unfaithful, it's you." A tight knot formed in her chest. "What are you talking about?" Daniel let out a dry laugh. "You think I don't know?" "I know everything, Sua. I've known for months. I've seen the way you move, the way you act when you think no one is watching." He took a step closer, his eyes locking onto hers. "I've been enduring it, hoping that maybe one day you'd get tired of misbehaving. That maybe I'd be enough for you." Sua felt exposed, like a wound had been ripped open. "I thought I could wait," Daniel continued. "That you'd realize I wasn't like the others. That you'd stop being so wild." Her breath hitched. "But I was wrong." He sighed, his voice softer now, but no less cutting. "The truth is, Sua, you're not worthy of love. You take and take, but you never give. You don't even know what loyalty means." The words hit her like a slap. For the first time in years, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Shame. She wanted to deny it, to tell him he was wrong, that she was capable of love. But deep inside, she knew the truth. She had spent so long chasing attention, drowning in fleeting moments, convincing herself she was in control. But maybe she had lost herself a long time ago. And maybe Daniel was the only one who had ever truly seen her. The weight of Daniel's words hung heavily in the air, each syllable drilling into Sua's chest. She stood there, frozen, as the reality of what he said settled over her like a dark cloud. Her mouth was dry, her hands trembling at her sides. She couldn't look him in the eye, couldn't find the words to defend herself, because in that moment she knew he was right. She had spent her life running from one fleeting pleasure to the next, never once pausing to consider what she was truly doing to herself and to the people who cared for her. But there was still a part of her that refused to accept it. "You don't understand," Sua whispered, the bitterness creeping into her voice. "You think you know me, but you don't. You've never seen the real me." She stepped back, shaking her head. "I'm not like the others. I can't be." Daniel didn't reply. He simply stared at her with an unreadable expression. Sua turned away, unable to face him any longer. Her body was moving on its own, her heart beating too fast. She had to leave. She had to escape this suffocating truth. As she grabbed her bag and walked out the door, she could feel the pieces of her carefully constructed world crumbling behind her. She was used to being in control, used to making the rules. But now, for the first time, she realized how much of herself she had lost in the process. The streets outside were dimly lit, the cool night air biting at her skin. She needed to think, needed to breathe. Her mind was racing with 1,000 thoughts, none of them making sense. She didn't go home. She didn't want to face the silence there either. Instead, she wandered the streets, lost in a sea of strangers. She thought about calling someone, maybe Deo, maybe even Femi, but she couldn't. There was no one left who could offer her what she truly needed, because she didn't know what that was. She ended up at the bar. The same one she always went to when she needed to forget, when she needed to drown out the noise in her mind. As she stepped inside, the familiar scent of alcohol and smoke filled her senses. The chatter and laughter of the crowd felt distant, like a dream she couldn't quite grasp. She sat at the bar and ordered a drink. She felt numb, like she was floating outside her own body. Then, as if by fate, she saw him. Tolu, her neighbor, the same one who had introduced her to the complexities of desire when she was younger. The one whose presence had once made her feel both powerful and helpless. He was sitting at a table in the corner, scanning the crowd with his eyes. When their gazes met, something flickered between them, something dark, something familiar. He smiled, and it sent a shiver down her spine. "Care for a drink?" Tolu asked in a slow voice. Without thinking, Sua nodded and followed him to the table. The alcohol had already begun to dull her senses, and in that moment, she didn't care. They talked, or rather, he talked. Tolu always knew how to take control of a conversation, how to make people feel like they were the only ones who mattered. She let him. She let him talk about everything and nothing, and for once, it felt easy. As the night wore on, her defenses began to crumble. The weight of Daniel's words, the emptiness she had carried for so long. Everything seemed to fade away as Tolu's presence filled the space. He was like a balm for the injury she hadn't known was there. And then it happened. Tolu leaned in close, grazing her arm with his hand, his breath warm against her ear. "You've been running from something, Sua," he whispered. "But you don't have to run anymore." The words felt like a promise, one she couldn't resist. But as they locked eyes, Sua saw something dark, something that had always been there between them. It wasn't love, wasn't even affection. It was something much more dangerous. Before she could pull away, Tolu's lips met hers. The kiss was electric, full of need, full of desperation. But as their lips parted, Sua felt a sudden, sharp pain, like a realization she wasn't ready to face. She pulled back, her breath quickening. "No, this isn't right," she whispered, but her voice felt small and powerless. Tolu chuckled softly, his fingers brushing her hair back. "It's too late for that now, Sua." The room spun around her. For the first time in years, she felt truly lost. She had been running for so long, chasing something she could never catch, and now she had no idea who she was anymore. As she stood up to leave, Tolu grabbed her wrist, gripping her tightly. "You can't run anymore, Sua. Not from me. Not from yourself." Her heart hammered in her chest, and she yanked her arm free. Without saying another word, she stumbled out of the bar. The streets outside were eerily quiet now. The city that had once felt full of possibilities now feeling cold and alien. As she walked aimlessly, the familiar hum of her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was Daniel. "Please talk to me." But she didn't answer. She couldn't. Sua kept walking, lost in the storm of her thoughts. And as she walked, something deep within her seemed to break, a realization that would haunt her for the rest of her life. She had spent so much time searching for something to fill the emptiness, never realizing that the void inside her was one she had created herself. And now, with everything falling apart, she was left with nothing but the consequences of her choices. Thank you for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up, comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more interesting stories like this. See you in our next video. Bye!